Welcome back to Disquite Time. Ann and Kelly here, and we have something a little bit different this time. It's going to be kind of a two-parter. I want today to start off by talking about European fairy tales, folklore, that type of thing, and kind of some of the common themes that we see in it. But then I want to come back next time and spend some time talking about cryptids and scary things and how they kind of tie into those themes as either supporting or rejecting them. So that is my plan.
All right.
Yeah.
I didn't do any research on this one, so I'm just here to go, oh, I didn't know that many times, because I probably didn't know that.
Well, you'll know. I mean, once we get started, we've already talked about it a little bit. You have an idea of where this is going.
Good idea, but I bet I don't know a lot of this, so this is going to be all new to me too.
Okay. Well,
I'm right along with the audience for a ride.
Okay. Well, this is hopefully going to be quite a ride. Now there's Grimm's fairy tales is who I'm mostly looking at right now, just because fairy tales and folk legend have been a part of European, and we're going to stick with European just because that's the most familiar to both us and most of the audience right now. Hopefully this can expand. But they went through and they collected and kind of summarized like a whole giant melting pot of stories, as like the same story was out there in 15 different versions, and they kind of condensed it all down into one. So they did a whole lot of work, and so we're going to base it kind of on that. And now, out of those hundreds of stories, we're probably all each familiar with a couple dozen.
Right.
But it doesn't take long for the themes to really kind of jump out. All right. So, and fairy tales, I think, are fair game, not just because, you know, they say so much about what we think and believe and about what scares people, is that they are kind of dark and spooky all on their own. They're not
real ones.
Right. Real ones are not the Disney versions at all. I think we all know that, but
Disney sanitized them a lot, and some of his stuff is still dark.
Yeah, some of that stuff, even with Disney, it's still very dark, but
the sanitized version.
Somewhere along the way, from 1300s till now, or even further ago till now, we decided that children didn't need to be that scared.
Right. Yet, even looking at your own son, C, he loves scary stories.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Kids love scary stories. And I'm not sure then who decided that scary is bad.
Reason. Scary within reason.
Right, but he's learned early on that scared, something scary, a scary story that has a wrap up at the end that explains stuff, is cathartic for fears and anxieties.
Yes. Well, it also can teach you what to be afraid of and what not to be afraid of.
Right. I mean, let's face it was very practical. Don't go off in the woods in 1400 Germany.
Right.
You would get eaten by a wolf. I mean, that was just the way. But now, yeah, of course it wouldn't be. But it was practical.
Now, to Horseshoe Bend, he's fine.
Right. It was practical in 1400 Germany to teach children to be afraid of the woods.
Right. Right. Or getting lost in the woods where you didn't have drones to go find somebody. So.
Right. It was a different time.
So in age-appropriate news, did you hear Julian Sands is missing in California while hiking?
I did not.
For over a week in snow.
Oh no, we've lost
Julian Sands
too?
That's what it sounds like. And that was, our age. Anyone who's listening to this, you know who that is.
Right. What a bummer.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. I have to confess that apparently my new sofa is entirely too comfortable, and I have now twice fallen asleep sitting on it, last night and tonight. And today.
Jealous.
So it might be a little too comfy.
Or maybe it's cursed.
It might be, but it was new. It's less
True.
likely to be haunted or cursed if you buy it new, which is one of the reasons to buy it new. Also less likely to have bed bugs.
Bed bugs. Yeah.
So, I mean, 3 good reasons to buy new furniture.
Right. Lack of a curse, lack of bed bugs.
Which are sort of a curse.
That's true. The gift that keeps on giving. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Just
Anyway, sorry, but yes,
listen,
woods,
yeah,
scary
what to be
things.
scared of. Yeah. So that is actually one of the top things on my list. Huh?
You should be scared of bed bugs.
Right. But that was kind of one of the top things was topographically, what's scary, what's not. For the most part, being in town isn't scary. Being outside of town is more scary in these stories, in general.
Right.
Another really, really big theme in a lot of these stories, of course, is this idea of social class and power. Those who are of an upper class and have power, that's a good thing. That's what everyone aspires to. But also, these who have power are usually bad.
Right.
It's kind of a, yeah. If you struggle your way up, you're good. If you start out on top, you're bad.
Yes.
And there's also this common theme of following orders. If you do, and this is older, I mean, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, this is full of that too. If you do what you're told to do, you're okay, but if you misstep at all, then there's these dire consequences. So following orders, power, class, huge themes. But then also social mobility, which is kind of interesting. I found that kind of interesting because, to my understanding, and I'm an anthropologist, not a historian, but social mobility wasn't much of a thing. I mean, you didn't get to change whole classes really during the times of the Brothers Grimm, but that's definitely in there. So, maybe because that is such a pipe dream is why it's such a thing.
Everybody dreamed of
no longer being a peasant, right? Moving up to this kind of non-existent middle class, merchant class versus, or even nobility. So, but that's huge. I mean, there's just tons of this idea of mobility up and down, of moving between those. And then there's also like a huge undercurrent of this idea of justice and judgment and karma, even though they don't ever say karma, but the idea that if you go against any of these aforementioned standards, bad things happen to you.
Right. That you have to follow the rules, and the rules are set in stone.
Right, and then like in Little Red Riding Hood, she follows the rules. She takes the basket from her mother. She goes through the woods to her grandmother's house. Here, woods, scary, bad. But she's not doing anything wrong, and that protects her. The wolf isn't able to get her. And she befriends the woodcutter. Yeah, she followed all the rules.
However,
and
the implication that Grandma did not follow the rules is then there.
Well, that's a good question. What did Grandma... well, no. I have it further down the list. We'll jump down there.
Oh, well, because she was ill and unable to care for herself.
Mm-hmm. Old and ugly. If you're not pretty and perfect, you will suffer the consequences. I mean, Cinderella's stepsisters couldn't just be unattractive and therefore not going to marry the king or the prince. Cinderella's stepsisters were awful people. Mm-hmm. But none of these people who make it through, who have good things happen to them, are ugly. There's definitely a pretty privilege.
I didn't remember Red Riding Hood's grandmother was unattractive.
Well, I mean, she was an old woman.
Right, but she wasn't necessarily ugly.
I know, but what are old women in these stories? They're crones, they're hags, they're ugly.
Well, somebody must have loved Grandma enough to send her daughter with a basket of food.
True.
Was not completely unloved and therefore completely deserving of this horrible fate, but something went wrong when she ended up eaten by a wolf.
Well, how dare you be old?
Shame on you for getting old.
Yep. Yeah, but
Okay.
that's also, ties into these ideas of, humility and humbleness and hard work, that if you display these characteristics, again, the bad people don't, the good people do. So that's something that they're very interested in, that they're very promoting. This, you've got to be humble, you've got to be hardworking. And another thing that I found interesting is the value they put on intelligence and quick thinking. You can't just be the dumb oaf, but still follow the rules and be kind and be humble. You have to still be quick thinking.
Right, like Hansel and Gretel.
Yes.
Hansel thought to leave the breadcrumb trail. Hansel thought to...
Yeah. Which one it was? Yeah, one of them thought to do these things that would keep them safe. And in I'm like Snow White, all of the times that she has to outwit the witch and think quickly and talk her way like out of the huntsman killing her, and just Rumpelstiltskin out the girl
right.
outwitting, and getting his name from him. All of these things, you have to be clever, you have to be smart. So obviously there was a lot of value in intelligence,
right, or at least some form of,
right, which we still do that today. I was like, oh, I'm so proud, bumper sticker of my straight A student. It's like, well, are you not proud of your straight C student?
Yeah, well, they're not gonna make a sticker for that.
Nope, they sure aren't, because we put value on intelligence. It's something we still very much do. But then, of course, these stories, and something else that's been covered quite a lot, and I'm not going to do it a whole lot. Of course, these stories are a lot about the rites of passage, transitioning usually from childhood into adulthood. But there's other rites of passage, like from unmarried to married and that type of thing. That
right.
All of these rites, these major changes in life, are something that is wrapped up in these stories, and that makes sense because those are big deals.
Right.
And then one of the last things I have jotted down, which I think might be a slightly strange one, is there is kind of, contradictorily, there's a tone of both female empowerment and female subservience. And like their wives, their mothers, whatever. But so many of these stories feature very clever women who are the ones pushing the story forward.
They're very evil.
Some of them are very evil. Some of them are good.
The evil stepmother trope has been around a long time.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. The idea that if you're not their mother, you're not going to love them is definitely a very strong thread in there. That a lot of this, it's the women who are moving things forward and are quite powerful. Whether or not that gets punished, because that's scary, that varies from story to story. But there's definitely, I think, quite a bit in there about that.
Right.
So, and you can compare this to even older stories, Greek and Roman mythology, but also like Aesop's fables. You see a lot about the perseverance and the hard work and don't be greedy and, act kind, so karma again, and intelligence. Now, the clever one is the one who comes out ahead in the end.
Right, but a lot of these are also traits that are good for a society.
They are, a lot of them.
Hardworking, intelligent people in a society move the society forward.
Right, you're encouraged to be a hard worker.
Children who obey rules, children who do what they're supposed to, grow up and, live to be the ones who then are hardworking and intelligent. So you can see why these were, especially as societies developed.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying that there's nothing that supports why they're like this, but and they would be valuable, but at the same time, well-behaved women seldom make history. So that you do need your rule breakers, etc. But in these stories, they tend to be punished.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look at Pinocchio. He's punished a lot. For wanting to be a real boy and then becoming a semi-real boy, and then every time he tells a lie and he behaves badly, he gets sent off to an island to be a slave as a donkey. It's just terrible things happen to him because he's not following the rules and being what everyone expects of him. And until he becomes an actual real boy, he doesn't get rewarded.
Right. He has to be that, yeah.
Yeah, which is creepy when you think about it.
Well, everything about Pinocchio was creepy.
Well, that's true.
I have never really enjoyed Pinocchio. That one is
No, it's never been my favorite. Never been my favorite. But not just the common ones. There's all sorts of the idea of three little gnomes in the forest, which is not that different from Three Little Pigs.
Right.
And the three spinners, where lazy is not something to be rewarded, and Brave Little Tailor, and Cinderella, and Little Red Cap, or Little Red Riding Hood, depending on the translation of it. Rapunzel, Hansel and Gretel, Rumpelstiltskin, all very, very, in their original form, dark stories.
Very dark, yeah. Definitely
terrible things happen to these.
Yeah, really awful things happen in the original stories. Cinderella's sisters have to cut off parts of their feet to try to fit it in the glass slipper.
Ew. Yeah.
It's like, ew, this was a glass shoe. You thought that wasn't going to show.
Right. And it's a story. Yeah. And there's so many of them that are like that. So, there's just certain values that really seem to be, I'd say that handful of them that seem to be the most important. The following the rules, the wanting to better yourself, work harder, and then of course pretty privilege and intelligence privilege, and trying to be, you have to be smart and beautiful and hardworking and all these perfect things. I mean, which that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. Oh, and stay out of the woods.
Right, on top of that.
It's just, wow, it's a lot of pressure.
Exactly.
I mean, it definitely served its purposes. But the reason I wanted to talk about these this time is that next time I want us to get together a list of some of our favorite cryptids, and we can talk about then, what do they represent? Do they represent being hardworking or not hardworking? Do they represent mobility, whatever? Or do they represent something good about the unknown? Something like that.
Yes. I've got a crazy dog here.
Oh, is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. You're hearing a dog trying to shove its way under my arm to get food early.
Ah, gotcha.
Speaking of hardworking.
She's very hardworking.
She is. She's always working very hard to get that meal just a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So Polly wouldn't want to run into in the woods, perfectly honest.
True. I would be very scared of her in the woods.
They're noisy, though. Very noisy. Yes, we can get cryptids together. So, what kind of things are you thinking of? How would, just give us an example of a cryptid that would somehow apply.
Let's see. Let's say Mothman. Mothman. He shows up at sites where there's going to be some kind of human catastrophic failure. So he's demonstrating intelligence. He's demonstrating kind of like this protection of others. So I guess humility, maybe that's what that would fall under. Hard work. He doesn't have to do it, but he is doing it.
Okay.
But he's scary, he's bad, we don't listen to him because he has the ugly penalty. Because he looks like a big moth.
This is very true. He does look like a big moth. That is somewhat scary.
Right, so he doesn't get the legitimacy. Like if okay, I was going to say Elon Musk, but that's a terrible example. But if somebody respected and high profile stood on top of a bridge and said, "Hey, there's a problem. It's going to fall," then you'd probably get a lot more coverage. But instead, you get Mothman.
Right, and somebody's supposed to be scary, and that's it.
And they focus on, "Oh my gosh, I saw Mothman," not, "Oh, I think there might be something wrong with that bridge," So
right, it's always Mothman that's scary.
Yep, so he gets a negative to his charisma checks, and he fails every time so far.
Yeah, he does. He has so far. Nobody's believed him yet when they see him.
No, it's not till after the fact that they go, "Oh, yeah, that was a problem."
That's yeah, that's a shame though. Maybe that is what it is. It's just because he isn't pretty enough.
Nope, he's obviously intelligent. I mean, he was wearing clothes at the mine disaster.
Right. Well, and he has been seen in a trench coat in other parts of the world.
In other parts of the world too. So he's intelligent and humanoid and hardworking, and he's traveled the world finding these disasters. And
nobody ever listens to him, though.
Nope. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking at, is kind of how to tie some of these other cryptids in. So what do they say about us? Just like fairy tales, because they're dark and scary, what do they say about us and what we're afraid of, and what aspects of them are we not respecting that we should respect?
Yeah. Well, a lot of them have some things in common too. Things like fear of famine, of not providing, things like Hansel and Gretel. Why were the children turned out? It wasn't just because the parents were evil.
No, they were on hard times. They couldn't support them.
Afraid of, and so somebody with plenty took advantage of that. You can easily equate the witch in Hansel and Gretel to things like, child predators who they have more and they lure the children to them. So it's certainly still topical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, these stories by no means don't apply to us anymore. Even if our modern versions are a little less dark, have stripped some of the dire warnings out. But maybe we don't need those warnings anymore. I mean, we don't need stay out of the woods warnings for our kids. We need stay away from the unmarked van.
Right. That's what became the dark woods, was the white van.
Right. Which I have one of those in my neighborhood. It just stays on the street all the time.
Right. That one's probably okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine. But still. Just what we need to be afraid of has changed a little. So these fairy stories have become just that. And that's something we can talk about in the future also. It's just the idea, especially the Northwestern European idea of fae, and what is fae and what are fairies and what happens if you interact with them.
Right.
Kind of what that's teaching us. Because that's a whole nother ball of wax. It's not even covered by fairy tales.
Right. Fairy tales don't have very much to do with those, but they are certainly scary.
Yeah. Fairies are scary stuff.
Yeah.
But they'll be something we can talk about separately just because they're such a big category. And they're very interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing though, so.
Yes, we'll cover those separately. All right, I think we can probably wrap up here then.
Okay.
Trying to keep these a little bit shorter. And we'll...
cryptid or two?
Yeah, we'll try a cryptid or two after this. So, we will see you guys shortly. Bye.
Bye.